"Oh, hey, come sit down. Get cozy because tonight is the night we've been waiting for. If this story has a hold on you, a little like helps more than you know. You remember how he told her that her hope was agony? Well, tonight she finally makes him beg for it, and it is so satisfyingly cruel." Previously on Crimson Romance, Prince Kaelen dragged Lyra through shadow, betraying his promise of sanctuary to claim her as his prize. Imprisoned within a glittering amethyst cage, she believed herself utterly alone. But a secret signal pierced the darkness, a message from a ghost she thought long lost. Now, 2 prisoners are trapped within the obsidian atrium, and not all cages are made of stone. "He said my hope was agony. I made him beg for it." It began not as a sound, but as a breaking. A psychic snap, loud as a star cracking in half inside her skull. The bond they had forged in desperation, the fragile link he had used to pull her through dimensions, had not just strengthened. It had inverted. It had become a maw. His life crashed into hers. 1,000 years of it. Not memories, not stories, raw, unfiltered sensation. The shriek of steel on a battlefield under a forgotten sun. The taste of blood, hot and coppery in her throat. The suffocating weight of earth as a grave closed over him. The centuries of silent, waiting darkness. Screams of the dying, the whispered pleas of souls he'd harvested. The bone-deep chill of an existence so long it had forgotten the meaning of warmth. She was drowning in him. A single drop of rain in a storm-tossed, blood-dark sea. And for Kaelen, it was worse. He was an ancient thing, a creature of shadow and carefully curated emptiness, his emotions worn smooth by time into little more than contempt, duty, and a profound, aching weariness. Into that placid void she poured, not her memories, but the engine that made them. Hope. Raw, undiluted, defiant hope. It was not the gentle warmth of a candle. It was the incandescent fury of a forge, a psychic fire he had no defense against. It scoured the dust from corners of his soul he hadn't visited in centuries. It felt like being flayed alive by sunlight. He slid down the wall, gasping, golden eyes blown wide with a pain that was utterly alien. He saw through her eyes, the memory of her mother's smile, the scent of old parchment in the scriptorium library, the fierce, stupid loyalty she felt for her friend, Sloane. Each pure, bright feeling was a shard of glass embedding itself in his mind. He clutched his chest, a reflexive human gesture he hadn't made since he was 1.
"Make it stop."
Lyra couldn't hear him. She was lost in the din of his past, the cacophony of 1,000 years of violence. Her own name felt like a half-forgotten word in a dead language. The siphon was awake, and it was ravenous. The psychic shockwave that erupted from the prince's wing of the atrium was not a sound Vesper heard, but a pressure she felt against her skin, a dissonant chord in the ancient song of the fortress. It was chaotic, uncontrolled, tainted with a searing human brightness that had no place here. The keystone. She had warned him. She had told Kaelen that bringing the scriptorium whelp into their heart was a fool's gambit, a weakness born of some sentimental rot he'd contracted in the mortal realm. He had dismissed her with that infuriating, condescending smirk. He had it under control, he'd said. Vesper lifted her chin, her dark eyes narrowed. Control had just left the building. Her loyalty was to her prince, but her duty was to the unwritten court. And the court was now threatened by the very prize he had brought home. She turned to the 2 guards behind her, their armor the color of a starless night. Her voice was low, cutting, and carried no hint of debate.
"Initiate Protocol Umbra. Seal the atrium. Full lockdown. No one enters or leaves. The prince is contained. Secure his wing. No one approaches until I give the word."
The guards bowed their heads in unison and melted back into the shadows. Below, in the sprawling darkness of the fortress, Vesper watched as her command took root. A low, oppressive hum vibrated up through the stone beneath her feet. Faint lines of silver energy flared to life along the edges of every wall, every archway, every tower. Gates of solid shadow slammed down over corridors, their impact silent but absolute. The obsidian atrium, a fortress built to keep the world out, had just become a cage. The pain was receding. For Kaelen, the fire of her hope had banked to agonizing coals. For Lyra, the drowning roar of his past had quieted to a crushing weight in the back of her mind, a library of horrors she now carried with her. He pushed himself off the wall, every movement stiff. His molten gold eyes found hers across the room, and for the first time, she saw something other than predator or captor. She saw fear. Then it came, a voice that was not a voice, a thought that was not his own. It was a cold, immense presence that coiled in the center of his mind, heavy with the weight of millennia. It did not speak, it simply summoned. Kaelen's body went rigid. Every Eidolon was bound to their sire, but the patriarch's call was absolute. It was not a request to be considered or a command to be obeyed. It was a gravitational pull on the very essence of his being. To resist was not an option. It was a metaphysical impossibility. He took a staggering step toward Lyra, his hand outstretched as if to explain, to warn, to apologize.
Lyra,
The name was a ragged tear in the air between them. He had to go. He had to leave her here, alone, defenseless, with the echoes of his own monstrous life still ringing in her soul. He looked at the heavy, ornate door, knowing Vesper would have already sealed it, knowing who she would have sent word to. His jaw clenched.
don't move, don't trust anyone, just stay here.
He didn't wait for an answer. He turned to the solid amethyst wall, and the shadows in the corner seemed to deepen, to gather around him like a hungry cloak. They writhed, pulling at the edges of his form, and with a faint, soundless ripple, he was gone. The shadows settled. The room was empty, and Lyra was utterly, terrifyingly alone. Breathe, the first tenet of scriptorium meditation. Find your anchor. Her anchor was the locket at her throat, the cool silver against her skin. She focused on its weight, on the single, perfect memory captured within, the scent of rain on summer dust from her childhood home. It was a tiny, flickering candle against the hurricane of Kaelen's existence. But his memories fought back. They were insidious, sticky. A flash of a Parisian ballroom in the 18th century, the taste of champagne and despair on a courtesan's throat. The grim satisfaction of a political execution in a forgotten vampire court. Each one threatened to overwrite her own experiences, to stain her past with his. She felt her own identity begin to fray at the edges, the tapestry of her life unraveling thread by thread. Just as a wave of his cold, ancient loneliness threatened to pull her under completely, a new thought cut through the chaos. It wasn't his. It wasn't hers. It was a precise, familiar pattern, a psychic signature she knew as well as her own heartbeat. A silver thread in a blood-red tapestry. Sloane.
Lyra, gods, Lyra, answer me. Are you intact? That psychic blast. It shook the whole damn mountain.
Lyra seized the connection, her focus narrowing to that single, welcome presence. She didn't have the strength to project a full thought back, only a pulse of affirmation. I'm here.
Thank the archives. Listen, there isn't time. The lockdown is real, court-wide, Vesper's orders, but she's not the real problem. I've been mapping their command structure, cross-referencing guard patrols. The units mobilizing now, they aren't Vesper's honor guard. They're wearing the Patriarch's sigil. They're the Wardens, Lyra, his personal hunters.
A cold dread, colder than any of Kaelen's memories, washed over her. The Patriarch, Mordecai, the ancient monster Kaelen answered to.
They're not coming to secure the prince's wing. They're coming for you.
His return was as jarring as his departure. One moment, Lyra was alone with the approaching dread. The next, he was there, bringing the chill of Mordecai's throne room with him. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. The grim finality on his face told her everything. His meeting had not been a negotiation. It had been a sentence. The sound of the warden stopped directly outside the door. The clank of a heavy gauntlet on the crystalline surface. Lyra's breath hitched. Her pulse, a frantic bird against her ribs, jumped. She scrambled to her feet, backing away from the door, her eyes wide with terror. This was it. They were here. Her fear was a raw, primal scream in the back of her mind. And because of the siphon, her fear was his. The spike of her terror hit Kaelen not as an emotion, but as a physical blow, a psychic shrapnel burst. He staggered, a sharp gasp tearing from his lungs. The agony was instinctual, overwhelming, and their combined, explosive agony had to go somewhere. It lashed out. For a split second, the air in the room thickened, ionized. The faint, imprisoning sigils that had crawled over the amethyst door flared violently, a brilliant, blinding silver, and then died. The oppressive hum of the containment ward vanished. The door, which moments before had been a barrier capable of holding a god, was now just a door. Outside, the wardens cursed in surprise. A heavy silence fell. Lyra stared at the inert door. Kaelen stared at her. And in the space between them, a terrifying, impossible understanding dawned. He had pulled her through the now unwarded door and into this forgotten artery of the fortress, the prince of the unwritten court skulking through servant passages like a common thief. The irony was not lost on him. He pressed her back against the cold, damp stone, his hand covering her mouth, his other gesturing for silence. His body was a wall in front of hers, his scent, old books, night air, and something ancient and metallic filling her senses. When the sounds of the patrol faded, he slowly lowered his hand. His touch lingered for a fraction of a second too long, the warmth of his fingers a stark contrast to the chill in her veins. She jerked her head away. "Get off me."
Lower your voice. They'll have sentries everywhere.
"Good, let them find us. I'd rather face them than be trapped in the dark with you." The words were meant to be a blade, and they struck home. A muscle feathered in his jaw. His golden eyes, luminous in the gloom, held a flicker of something raw.
You think I want this? That agonized hope you radiate. It's a brand. It feels like my soul is peeling away from my bones. Every second I am connected to you is a fresh torment.
"Oh, you're tormented. I have the ghosts of every person you've ever killed screaming in my head. I can't remember my own mother's face without seeing the face of some knight you gutted in the 10th century. So you'll have to forgive me if I don't weep for your discomfort." Her words hung between them, brutal and true. He didn't flinch. He just held her gaze, the arrogance stripped away, leaving something stark and weary.
I know I can feel it. I feel what you feel, and you feel what I feel. That is the nature of this curse, which means we have a choice. We can stand here and let our mutual agony tear us apart until the wardens find us, or we can use it.
Use it how? To do what?
What we just did to get out, that energy. Your fear, my pain, it overloaded the ward. If we can control it, focus it. We might have a weapon, a key.
A key forged from their shared pain. The price of every step toward freedom would be a piece of herself, drowned in his past. The price for him would be the slow, searing purification he didn't want and didn't believe he deserved. It was a monstrous proposition, and it was their only chance. They had agreed, not with words but with a shared, resentful nod, a truce of the damned. Now came the impossible part, turning agony into a tool.
The ward on my chamber door was a masterwork. This is a simple security lattice. It should require less energy. We don't want an explosion, we just want to turn it off.
And how do you propose we do that? We can't just decide to be terrified in unison.
No, we don't have to. The link is already there, the siphon. We just have to open it willingly.
Willingly? The word was a violation in itself. He took a half step closer. "I need you to reach for me," he whispered, his voice a low velvet burr that slid under her skin. Psychically. "And I will reach for you. Don't fight the connection. Let it flow." Her heart hammered. This was what she'd been trained her whole life to prevent, a willing psychic union with an eidolon, a heresy of the highest order. But the alternative was a cage, or worse, the patriarch's hunters. She closed her eyes. She took a breath, and instead of pushing his presence away, she allowed it. It was like opening a floodgate. His ancient weariness, a vast, gray ocean of it, washed into her. At the same time, she felt him flinch as her own stubborn, defiant life force, her hope, her fear, her anger, surged into him. It was clumsy, uncontrolled, a raw push of shared will. She felt him grunt in pain, his mental shields buckling. She cried out, a sharp, involuntary sound. The power had nowhere to go but out. The crimson lattice on the door didn't just die. It flashed white and shattered with a sound like cracking ice. The lumen globes that lined the main corridor on the other side of the door exploded in a shower of sparks, plunging the area into darkness. A fine layer of frost instantly bloomed on the stone walls around them. Both of them stumbled back, gasping. Lyra's legs gave out and she slid down the wall, trembling violently. Kaelen braced himself against the opposite wall, his face ashen, his knuckles white where he gripped a rusted pipe. They had a key, and it was going to kill them. Vesper had delivered her report. The prince was compromised. The keystone was a chaotic, uncontrolled power source. The atrium was secure. She awaited her orders. Mordecai did not move. He did not speak. For a full minute, he simply regarded her from the depths of his timeless contemplation. The silence itself was a form of pressure.
Patriarch, the prince's sentimentality has created a significant security breach. I recommend we isolate the keystone and place the prince in stasis until her influence can be purged.
Mordecai made a small, almost imperceptible gesture with one skeletal hand, a gesture that dismissed Vesper's concerns, her strategy, her very presence as irrelevant. A shadow detached itself from the wall behind the throne and glided forward. It was a man, or something that wore the shape of one, his beauty as severe and perfect as a marble statue. He wore a high-collared black uniform that fit like a second skin, and his short-cropped silver hair seemed to absorb the light. His eyes were the color of a frozen lake. This was Archon Valerius.
Your methods are emotional, Lady Vesper. Born of a flawed loyalty to my errant child, you seek to contain the storm. I prefer to harness the lightning.
Valerius stopped beside Vesper and bowed his head, a single, sharp, economical movement. He radiated a profound stillness, a psychic silence that seemed to deaden the very air around him. Where Kaelen was a storm of ancient passions, Valerius was the void.
The keystone is no longer merely a tool to unlock the conquered. It has become a power source of its own, an asset of unparalleled value. Archon Valerius will retrieve it.
Vesper's composure finally cracked. A flicker of alarm crossed her features. Valerius was not a diplomat. He was an executioner.
And the prince.
Mordecai's void-like eyes settled on her, and for the first time, Vesper felt a sliver of true fear.
Secure the asset, the prince, is an acceptable loss.
Valerius gave a chilling, curt nod. He did not speak. He did not need to. He turned and flowed from the room like a weapon being unsheathed, his purpose absolute, his path clear. Vesper was left alone in the crushing silence of the throne room, the patriarch's judgment hanging in the cold air like a shroud. They had been moving for what felt like hours, using their volatile key twice more on minor security checkpoints. Each use was a fresh violation, leaving Lyra more fragmented and Kaelen more scoured by her light. Now they were waiting, hiding. Sloane was their only hope, their only guide in this labyrinth of ancient stone and hostile magic. Lyra felt Sloane's psychic touch, not as a whisper this time, but as a careful, precise unspooling of information directly into her mind. It was an act of incredible skill and trust. A luminous map bloomed behind Lyra's eyes. It was not a map of corridors and chambers, but of power. A web of glowing silver lines, the atrium's psychic architecture. Wards pulsed like angry red stars, power conduits thrummed with ancient energy.
Okay, I have it. The Eidolon built this place in layers like a damn onion. The newer security wards are slapped on top of the original dimensional anchors. They don't always line up perfectly. There are seams, weak points.
On the mental map, Sloane highlighted a twisting, indirect path, a route that bypassed the heavily patrolled main arteries and exploited these psychic seams. It was a ghost's path, a route through the very magic that held the fortress together.
She's found a way.
Kaelen watched her, his expression unreadable in the dim light. He saw the flicker of hope on her face and felt a corresponding pang of his own unique agony.
A way to where?
Sloane's mental projection zoomed in. The glowing lines of their path all converged on a single, massive, blindingly bright node at the heart of the map.
It's the only way out of this sector. You have to disable the master ward. It's the source node for the entire lockdown protocol in the upper atrium. It's located in the old ceremonial core. The problem is, it's the most heavily guarded place in the fortress right now. Valerius and his wardens are using it as their command post.
The hope on Lyra's face died. The ceremonial core, the heart of the hornet's nest. Sloane had given them a map, but it led directly into the hunter's jaws. This was their fourth ward. They had developed a grim, silent rhythm. She would locate the ward's resonant frequency, the psychic keyhole. He would act as the conduit, bracing himself for the searing pain of her hope. Together, they would turn the key. But the process was becoming more refined, more intimate. The barriers between their minds were thinning with each use.
Are you ready?
Lyra nodded, not looking at him. She closed her eyes and reached for him across the siphon. This time, there was less resistance, less psychic friction. Their minds touched, and the connection slammed into place, deeper and more controlled than before. She felt his weary resolve. He felt her grim determination. They pushed. The ward didn't explode. It simply dissolved, shattering into a million motes of silent, fading light. A perfect, controlled break. But the psychic backlash, the feedback from a clean connection, was 1,000 times more potent. It wasn't a chaotic surge of emotion. It was a single, crystal-clear, high-fidelity memory, ripped directly from the oldest, darkest part of his mind and slammed into hers. A moonless night. A crumbling stone circle somewhere in the old world, centuries ago. A young man on his knees, no older than Lyra, with terror-filled brown eyes. A keystone. His power was running wild, making the very air shimmer and reality fray at the edges. Patriarch Mordecai stood behind him, his face younger but no less ancient, his expression one of cold disappointment. Mordecai's mental command echoed, not with sound but with pure, chilling intent. He is flawed, a broken instrument. End it. And Kaelen, his own face a mask of grim, sorrowful duty, knelt before the boy. He murmured a single word in an ancient tongue, a word that might have been an apology or a prayer. Then he sank his fangs into the young keystone's neck. Lyra didn't just see it, she felt it. She felt the boy's life and soul, his anchored, sacred power, being drawn out, consumed, erased. Not just death, oblivion. The antechamber snapped back into focus. The memory faded, but the horror remained, branded onto her soul. Lyra stumbled backward, her hand flying to her own throat. A choked, strangled scream tore from her lungs. She stared at Kaelen, but she didn't see the prince of the unwritten court who had been helping her escape. She saw the monster from the memory, the practiced, efficient monster who had done this before. The fragile truce, the hateful partnership, the thin strand of hope that he might be different, it all vaporized in the heat of that one memory. He wasn't her reluctant captor. He wasn't a political player in a complicated game. He was her executioner in waiting.
You've done this before.
Kaelen stood frozen in the center of the room. The memory had resurfaced for him, too, dredged up by the siphon. He looked older, the centuries pressing down on him, the weary mask of the prince crumbling to reveal the ancient soldier beneath. He didn't deny it. He couldn't.
Lyra.
Don't you say my name? Was that the plan all along? Lure me in, use me to break the Concord, and then what? A mercy killing. Is that what you call it when you devour someone's soul?
He took a step toward her, his hands raised in a placating gesture that looked utterly alien on him. The movement was a mistake. Lyra flinched back so violently, she hit her head against the stone wall.
No, it wasn't like that. His power was corrupting. It was killing him, tearing reality apart around him. It was an ending, yes, but it was a mercy, a release.
A mercy? You drank him like wine and you call it mercy. Is that what you'll tell yourself when Mordecai gives the order for me? That I'm flawed, a broken instrument.
She threw his master's words back at him, the words from the memory, and they hit him harder than any physical blow. He stopped, his face ashen. He had no defense. She was seeing the truth of him, the grim function he served in their world. He was the patriarch's blade, the one sent to do the work too final, too intimate for anyone else. The agony of her hope had been a clean fire. This, her terror of him, was a filthy, choking smoke that filled his lungs. For the first time in centuries, Kaelen felt the sting of shame. He looked down at his own long-fingered hands, hands that had held books of poetry, guided a lover's face, and ended the lives of forgotten gods. Now he could only see them as the weapons she saw.
What I have done, does not have to be what I will do.
Really? And what changed? Me, you think because you feel this torment from my hope that it absolves you? It doesn't. It just makes you a monster with an inconvenience.
As they stood locked in their hateful standoff, a new sensation crept into the room. A subtle deadening of the air. A psychic cold spot that muted the faint hum of the conduits in the floor. It was a creeping, unnatural silence. Kaelen's head snapped up, his golden eyes widening in alarm.
Valerius.
The name was a shard of ice. Valerius's psychic dampening field. He was close, hunting them. And they were standing here, tearing each other apart, broadcasting their position with every spike of emotion.
We have to move now.
He looked at her, his eyes pleading. Not for forgiveness, not for understanding, but for survival. Lyra stared back, her heart a cold, hard knot of hatred in her chest. She wanted to let the wardens come. She wanted to watch them take him. But she knew with a sickening certainty that Valerius was not here to arrest a prince. He was here to secure an asset. Her. Hating Kaelen was a luxury she couldn't afford. Survival was the only thing left. Without a word, she pushed herself off the wall and stalked past him toward the exit, her message clear. They were moving together, but they were no longer allies. They were enemies, chained by the very power that was supposed to free them. The march was a special kind of hell. Every drip of water sounded like a warden's footstep. Every shadow seemed to coalesce into the shape of Valerius. The Archon's null field was a constant pressure at the edge of their senses, a psychic vacuum that promised stillness and death. Sometimes it felt distant, sometimes terrifyingly close. He was hurting them. With every step, Lyra felt the siphon's quiet work. It was no longer a violent intrusion, but a slow, seeping poison. A thought would surface in her mind. This path is unstable. The stone is too old. And she wouldn't know if it was her own observation or an echo of his centuries of experience. She would feel a flash of irritation at a loose stone under her boot, and it would be tinged with an ancient, weary contempt that was not hers. She was leaking into him. He was seeping into her, and the line between them was blurring into a muddy, terrifying gray. Behind her, Kaelen walked with a rigid, unnatural control. He was fighting a war on two fronts, one against the hunter behind them, and a second, more desperate battle within their bond. He was actively trying to reinforce his mental shields, not to keep her out, but to keep himself in to give her a barrier to cling to slow the erosion of her identity. It was an exhausting, agonizing act of penance, a desperate attempt to prove his words true. And because of the wall of her hatred between them, it was an act she refused to see or acknowledge. To her, his silence was just the quiet of a predator, biding his time. There was no discussion, no negotiation. Lyra turned, her face a pale, emotionless mask. She met Kaelen's gaze, and her gray eyes were like chips of frozen sea. She reached for the siphon with a cold, brutal efficiency. She didn't ease into the connection, she ripped it open. The resulting surge was raw and violent. She fed her hatred and terror of him into the bond, and he accepted it, a grim martyr taking the lash. He channeled the agonized energy, his jaw tight, a line of blood appearing on his lower lip where his fang pierced the skin. The silver ward screamed, a high-pitched psychic shriek that vibrated in their bones, and then it tore apart like silk. They both staggered back from the psychic recoil. Lyra stumbled, catching herself against the damp wall. A wave of dizziness washed over her. For a moment, she couldn't remember which way they were going. The name Sloane floated through her mind, but it felt distant, like a character from a book she'd once read. The erosion was accelerating. Kaelen leaned against the opposite wall, his chest rising and falling heavily. The cold light in his palm flickered, threatening to go out. The effort of channeling her raw hatred while simultaneously shielding her from the worst of the psychic backlash was immense. It was like trying to contain a supernova in a glass jar. He looked at her, saw the flicker of disorientation in her eyes, and the weary lines on his face deepened with a pain that had nothing to do with her hope. This was the pain of his own failure. He was saving her from his court, but he was destroying her in the process. He pushed himself upright, his voice a hoarse rasp.
We're close, the core is just ahead.
They were in the lion's den. The air itself felt like an enemy, pressing in, stealing the breath from Lyra's lungs. Kaelen's small palm light was guttering, a tiny flame fighting a hurricane of silence. They were a breath away from being caught. The rhythmic tramp of the wardens echoed from the chamber ahead, no longer a distant threat, but an immediate one. Lyra pressed a hand to her temple, fighting a wave of vertigo. Her thoughts were a confusing slurry of English and the ancient, guttural tongue of the Eidolon. She knew, with a terrifying certainty, that she couldn't survive another full-power blast through the siphon. There wasn't enough of her left. What remained was a flickering candle flame, and the next storm would extinguish it for good. Kaelen watched her, his expression grim. He could feel her consciousness fraying, her sense of self slipping through his grasp like fine sand. He had failed the first keystone with a quick, merciful death. He was failing her with a slow, agonizing erasure. He met her gaze in the dim, flickering light, and for a moment the hatred between them was eclipsed by a shared, desperate dread. He gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. "This is the last one. I'll get you through." It was a promise he had no idea if he could keep. They rounded the final corner, and the vast, open space of the ceremonial core spread out before them, and their hunt was over. The moment they stepped into the chamber, the heavy silence snapped into a high-tension wire. Valerius turned his head slowly, his movements economical and precise. His eyes, the color of a frozen lake, found them instantly. There was no surprise on his face, no anger, only the flat, dispassionate regard of an executioner examining his tools.
Prince Kaelen, your rebellion has reached its predictable and tiresome conclusion.
Kaelen didn't answer. He simply moved, placing himself between Valerius and Lyra. It was not a subtle gesture. It was a line drawn in the ancient marble of the atrium. He was no longer hiding, no longer running. He was making his stand. For the first time, he was openly, irrevocably defying the will of his sire, choosing this mortal, this scriptorium heretic, over his duty, his court, and his own continued existence.
The patriarch is a sentimentalist. He offered you the dignity of stepping aside. I am not so indulgent. Surrender the asset.
Her name is Lyra, and she is not an asset.
Valerius's lips thinned in a bloodless line, the closest he might ever come to an expression of contempt.
It has a name. Irrelevant. This ends now. Give it to me, or I will take it from your cooling corpse.
You've been waiting a long time to say that to me, haven't you, Valerius?
For centuries.
And with that, Valerius moved. He didn't charge. He flowed, crossing the distance between them in a silent, impossible blur of motion, a silver gauntlet raised to strike. The battle for Lyra's soul had begun. Kaelen fought with the grace of a fallen angel and the savagery of a cornered wolf. He was faster, centuries older, and fueled by a desperate, protective rage. But Valerius was the perfect counter. His null field was a suffocating cloak, dampening Kaelen's otherworldly speed, grounding his ability to shift and phase. Every blow Kaelen landed felt like punching solid marble. Every strike Valerius returned was precise, brutal, and aimed to cripple. Silver gauntlets clashed against arms that blocked with the sound of cracking stone. Lyra watched, her heart seizing. Kaelen was losing. He was fighting on Valerius's terms in a deadened zone where his Eidolon advantages were minimized. Valerius was a purist, a master of physical combat, and he was systematically breaking Kaelen down. A vicious kick sent Kaelen stumbling back, and Valerius followed, his movements relentless, a perfect engine of destruction. The wardens advanced on Lyra, their faces hidden behind helms of black glass. She knew with absolute clarity that Kaelen was buying her time. A few precious seconds, and there was only one thing she could do with them. She turned her back on the fight and faced the master ward. The captive star pulsed before her, immense and powerful. Breaking it would take everything she had left, everything and more. It would require a surge of power so vast, so total that it would not just fray her identity, it would obliterate it. She took a shuddering breath and reached for the siphon, preparing to offer her own soul to the fire.
Lyra, don't. It will take you. It will erase you.
His scream cut through the din of battle. It wasn't the command of a prince or the warning of a captor. It was the terrified plea of someone watching the most precious thing in his world poised on the edge of an abyss. He wasn't afraid of Valerius. He wasn't afraid of losing the fight. He was afraid of winning at the cost of her soul. In his golden eyes, wide with a horror that was entirely for her, she saw no trace of the monster from his memory. She saw only the man who was willing to die here, right now, rather than let her destroy herself. And in that single, heart-stopping moment, his selfless terror gave her a reason to trust him. Her plan changed. It was no longer about sacrifice. It became about surrender. She looked directly at him, her gray eyes meeting his across the battlefield, a silent, desperate communication passing between them. He thought she was a fire he couldn't contain, so she would give him the fire, all of it. Instead of just opening the siphon to the ward, she turned it inward. She took the entirety of her consciousness, every memory, every fear, her mother's smile, Sloane's laugh, the scent of old books, the cool silver of her locket, her name, herself, and pushed it all into him. It was a terrifying, final act of both surrender and claiming. A psychic supernova erupted from her, not outward at the ward, but directly down the channel of the siphon and into the very core of Kaelen's being. Her last coherent thought was not a word, but a feeling, a desperate command aimed at the man she was entrusting with her soul. Don't let me go. The shockwave threw Valerius and his wardens back like discarded toys, their psychic dampening field erased in an instant. Kaelen was at the epicenter. The influx of her soul was a cataclysm, a universe of light and feeling and life crashing into his millennium of ordered darkness. It should have destroyed him. But her final thought, "Don't let me go," was an anchor. He held on to it, the single point of stillness in the hurricane that was now his mind. The chamber began to implode, chunks of black marble and fractured reality crumbling into a vortex of light. Kaelen, reeling but focused, moved. He was across the platform in a heartbeat, grabbing Lyra's now limp, empty body as she fell. She was terrifyingly light, a vessel without its contents, but he could feel her. Deep inside the chaos of his own mind, he could feel a tiny, fragile, flickering light that was her. Holding onto that light with every ounce of his will, he tore at the fabric of the collapsing reality around them. He didn't phase or teleport. He ripped open a dimensional rift, a violent, screaming tear of black and gold energy. Just as the floor beneath them disintegrated, he pulled them both through. Lady Vesper and a squad of her guards arrived on the shattered ledge of what was once the ceremonial core, just in time to see the violent rift snap, shut with the sound of tearing thunder. They stared into the swirling vortex of destruction where the master warred, and their prince's last known location used to be. Valerius, climbing from the rubble, his perfect uniform torn and his face bleeding black ichor, looked at the empty space with cold, murderous fury. Kaelen pushed himself to his knees, the mud soaking through his trousers. He was shaking, not from the cold, but from the sheer psychic overload. Her entire life was a symphony playing at full volume inside his head. He gathered Lyra into his arms. She was unconscious, her face pale and still as a marble effigy in the driving rain. Her dark hair was plastered to her skin, and she felt impossibly fragile. The atrium was gone. They were free. But the cost was a gaping, unknown variable. He held her close, pressing his forehead to hers, the cold rain running down both their faces. He closed his eyes, searching the vast, chaotic landscape of his own mind. And he found her. She was there. Not a memory, not an echo. A presence. A tiny, flickering ember of consciousness, huddled and lost in the 1,000-year-old labyrinth of his soul. She was alive, but she was a prisoner in a new kind of cage. He looked down at her still face, at the woman who had burned him with her hope and then trusted him with her very existence. And for the first time in 1,000 years, the harvester of the unwritten, the monster from the memory, the patriarch's blade, prayed. He prayed to any god that might be listening, gods he had long since dismissed as mortal fiction. He didn't pray for forgiveness. He prayed for the strength to be what she had trusted him to be, an anchor, her anchor in the abyss of himself. He had saved her from his world. But the real question, the one that would haunt him in the long nights to come, was whether he had only succeeded in becoming her living tomb. Oh my gosh, you guys, that ending. I'm still shaking. Lyra trusting him like that and Kaelen holding on to her. Don't let me go, I'm just breathless. And that moment when he ripped open the rift, talk about making an exit. Did you feel that ache when he found her, just a tiny spark inside him? My heart. Seriously, Kaelen, huh? Yeah, I wouldn't mind him showing up at my door, even if it meant a little chaos. What a cliffhanger. You absolutely do not want to miss what happens next. Make sure you subscribe to Crimson Tales, because these original stories are just getting started.